Welcome to the Diesel Podcast presented by DFC Diesel. Melissa, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. For anyone that didn't, well, I'm sure tons of people saw it, but you had invited me to be a guest on your podcast recently, and it was great to be kind of in the guest seat and answer questions and different things that you had. And I thought it'd be great to have you on the Diesel Podcast so I can ask you questions, things that I'm interested about. I know our audience will be about not just working on trucks, but your start and history evolution through the diesel automotive space. So welcome to the Diesel Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.
I know so many people are going to know you. Like, you have huge social media channels on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, tons of places. But I wanted to start, I wanted to get to know you as a person, like Melissa. Like, I know Diesel Queen. I followed you for a really long time. It's 5 years, maybe even longer. But I was really curious, if we were to step back, like growing up, being a teenager, all that stuff, were you always interested in getting involved in automotive, being a mechanic? How did you get into this field?
So I do have kind of a lengthy origin story, but I will try to not ramble as much as possible. So when I was younger, so my dad was always a logger, always has been, still is. Right. So for a long time, he also ran all his own equipment. He had his own business. He had a Cummins truck that I was absolutely just in love with from the day he bought it. And I didn't even know why. I was like, he bought that brand new in 2002. So I was 6 years old when he bought that. But I was never like, I spent a lot of time at work with my dad and, in tree harvesters and messing around in the woods and driving around in his truck. And not to piss off any people in this podcast, but it was an after time, or a fun time for us to, God damn it. Sorry. To black out bicyclists with his truck. It sounds mean and people might not like it, but that's just how I grew up. So just to kind of get a basis for how I grew up in the very tradesy diesel world kind of thing. But I was never really interested. I took a welding class in high school, or in middle school. I started taking welding classes, and my first time I ever welded, I'm like, I want to be a welder when I grow up. But obviously I was in middle school, so that lasted about a week, and then it was on to the next thing that I was into. But working on things specifically, even in high school, after I bought my first truck, I still wasn't super interested in working on it myself. I cared way more about being able to drive it and being loud and obnoxious with it. But it wasn't really until I started dating someone, and I was like 17 at this point. I was dating someone that had just started college at Wyotech, and I started, which is a trade school, and I started helping him work on he had like an 84 square body Chevy, big old lifted 35-inch 15.5 mud boggers, like glass packs and stacks coming out from the headache rack, like all this kind of shit. I just thought it was the most amazing thing ever. And I started helping him work on it and then work on his other stuff. And I just kind of fell in love with it. I'm like, you know what, maybe this is something I want to do for a living. And Wyotech being a college in that town, it was it was easily accessible, right? And because originally I just wanted to be a horse trainer, and my mom really kind of tried to push me into the community college horse training. Let's just do the diesel mechanics on the side kind of thing. They kind of told me it was a phase, which I don't really blame her for that, because they did not understand the money that could be made in the trades. And they really kind of thought that, man, I don't want her messing up and not getting the college degree that she could need later to pursue this bullshit, right? But being the stubborn teenager that I was, I said, nope, I'm going to Wyotech full time. And I always had an obsession with semis because my dad had a Kenworth log truck as well. So that would be really cool. So that's what I did, was I signed up for Wyotech and I took their heavy duty diesel class, their over the road heavy duty diesel classes. At the time, that was their only option. They didn't have the heavy equipment side. And I took that. I did advanced diesel for my one elective. And then my next elective, I did motorsports and chassis fabrication, just because I wanted to hone my welding a little bit more. And I graduated within a year of doing that. And then I was hired on at an international truck dealership before I even graduated college or trade school. And I started there, and I was just in love with it so much. Like, it's international, and Ford guys are going to hate me so much for saying this, but we did lots of engine work, a lot of engine work, like single cylinder rebuilds, all kinds of stuff, engine swaps. And like, granted, I wasn't really trusted in the beginning to do all those by myself, but I got to help with a lot of it. And I really fell in love with it. But a few months later, we just got hit really hard with a super, super slow time. And I know there's going to be some people that might try to cut in and be like, oh, well, you were cut hours because you're a woman. No, I was cut hours along with 2 other men because we just didn't have the work. And obviously the technicians that had been there longer are going to have priority of the jobs, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, that actually makes complete sense in my brain. And I told my service manager, I'm like, dude, I just bought a house, like my first house. I was like 19. I'm like, dude, I just bought a house. I can't afford to be getting 20-hour paychecks, like, or 40-hour paychecks. So that's only 20 hours a week. Like, I can't afford that. So while I was being sent home every day, I went around and I tried to hire into any truck shop I could possibly find. I tried Rush, and they wanted to put me on flat rate in 6 months. And I'm like, dude, I was lucky to change my own oil before I went into college. Like, I'm not going to survive doing flat rate. There's no way. And I tried a couple of other places. One place I got told I'd be a distraction. And then the other places were just like, honestly, most of the places, they could hire me, but it was for night shift, and I didn't want to work night shifts. So my boyfriend at the time was like, well, I work on air compressors, and there's this John Deere dealership like 20 minutes from our house, and they have a huge shop and they're hiring. You should stop in there and see what they say. So that's what I did. I marched my little butt right into this dealership, right into their office with the full-blown confidence of a 19-year-old, and was like, I want a job. And they're like, looked at me and they're like, oh, okay, well, what's your experience? Like, come in for an interview. So I came into an interview, and I did an interview with a man named Troy Nevergall, who was a service manager at the time at Honda Equipment in Commerce City. No longer Honda Equipment, it's now Four Rivers. But he interviewed me, he gave me an aptitude test, and he's like, all right, well, I'll call you later. And I'm like, I'll probably never get a call back, right? Well, I get a call back within 2 days. And he's like, you need to come down and see me now. So I show up, and he's like, so here's the deal. First of all, you are the highest scoring person we've ever had on our aptitude test. First of all, he's like, second of all, we aren't hiring a level 1 mechanic. Technically, we're hiring a level 2 mechanic, which obviously you are not. But with how well you did on your aptitude test and your personality, I think you would mix in great with the team here. I think you have a lot of potential. I would love to give you a chance. So let me see what I can do with our hiring department and see if we can change it from a level 1 or from a level 2 to a level 1 mechanic. And I'm like, oh my God, they actually liked me. Like, yay. And he's like, the only thing is you're not going to be starting in the John Deere side. You're going to be starting in the crane side, because Honda Equipment was a Manitowoc and Grove crane dealership, a John Deere dealership, and a Workin paving equipment dealership before John Deere and Workin even partnered. So I'm like, okay, that's awesome. And they're such a big shop that they can separate out their mechanics to each section. And I'm like, I don't even care. Just give me something to do. And he called me within a few days. He's like, you're fucking hired. When can you start? And I'm like, yesterday. So I show up to my first day of work, and I'm wearing, like, I don't have any work clothes, right? Because I just don't. So I show up in a tank top and jeans, and he's like, that ain't going to work. If Mark Connon walks in here and sees you, he's going to be like, fuck no. So I borrowed another technician's shirt, and I just started working on cranes, and there started my John Deere career. And I worked my ass off. I worked every single hour they could possibly give me. I worked any and all optional Saturdays I could possibly have. And I tried really hard, and I apparently made a really good impression, because he told me specifically when he hired me, he's like, I'm going to give you a little bit more money up front because I know you just bought a house, but I'm just letting you know when your 6 months comes up, your pay raise is going to be a little bit lower than what it normally would be because I'm giving you more money up front. And I'm like, I don't even care. I'm just happy to have a job. And sure as shit, 6 months comes along. He's like, you're doing fucking phenomenal. He's like, if they would let me give you more money, I would. And I'm like, okay. And I only worked at the crane department for like 4 months. And then I moved to the other side of the shop with the deer. And I started working on the deer equipment and under Rick. And I mean, everybody I worked with in that shop was amazing. The service manager was amazing. All the foremans were amazing. All the technicians, like they had one of the best teams of technicians I've ever seen. Everybody there was just phenomenal. And I learned so fucking much from them. The very first pay raise I got after that initial 6 months was a year, and they gave me $2 an hour. And I'm like, holy shit. And I'm looking, I'm like, are you sure that this number is right? And Rick looked at me and he's like, you are fucking worth it. He's like, you show up every day, you work all the hours you can, you try really hard, and you care about your work. You are worth it. I'm like, fuck, every single pay raise I got after that, regardless of what dealership I worked at, was $2 an hour or close to that. And basically just never looked back. I moved from Denver back to Wyoming, and I started working in an ag dealership. And that was a brand new experience for me, obviously, because I never worked on tractors before, which is actually more challenging than heavy equipment. And I worked there. And I worked there and at their Fort Collins dealership, which was a dual dealership, so construction and ag. And then after that, Hanan Equipment, which is my heart company, right? Because that's where I started. We're like, hey, we're actually finally building a shop in Cheyenne. It's going to be brand new. We want to hire you on immediately. You can help set up the shop. It's basically starting from scratch in a brand new shop with everything. I'm like, sign me up. I'm down, because at the time I was driving 40 minutes to work, and this cuts that in half. And that was an awesome experience. I got so much more responsibilities put on me at that shop because I was one of the only shop mechanics that was full time. I also filled in for my boss when he was gone, so I got to really learn how to manage a shop. When he quit, I actually filled in for him as a full-time boss for a few months until they hired someone else, which is an awesome experience. And I really learned and honed my customer skills with that a lot. And then I moved across the country and worked at a deer dealership here for a minute. And Diesel Laptops have been trying to hire me for like 3 years. And I move here and it's 90 degrees with 100% humidity. It's ridiculously hot. The dealerships are not at all what I was hoping for. And I'm like, you know what? Fine, I'll do it. This will give me a chance to maybe start my own shop. And so that's what I've been doing for about the last 2.5 years, is about maybe 3 years, is working for Diesel Laptops, working for companies like Hitachi, trying to hone in on how I'm going to start my own shop, really focusing on building my trucks, focusing on my social media. And yeah, that's what my future plan is to try to start a Cummins, specifically Cummins engine performance, like building shop. So that's kind of like my goal that I'm trying to work towards right now. So, yep, that's my story.
Hey, Diesel fans, wanted to let you guys know that our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 40% off MSRP code for you. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code TDP2540, you get your 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, opening mechanisms, handle designs, and their whole lineup is designed to meet any budget that you might have. So we really appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. So if you're in the market, head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code TDP2540, and get 40% off MSRP. You have a really interesting story, and there's a lot of it that has me curious, because my experience in automotive, I'm like an office nerd, right? So I would be like the guy on the phones with the like dual monitors and like like doing more of the sales kind of stuff. That was what I used to do. And we had a side that did, installs, repair, and everything like that. And to me, it was like an area that just made pure magic happen. Like I knew the process that things would go, but I didn't know all the details of everything. So when you were talking about getting into the industry and that finding that company and just being like, I'll do anything and just getting kind of thrown in there, the first thought I had, it'd be like, I would be so overwhelmed because my mind would be thinking, well, I need to learn A, B, C, D, and then progress to this so I get a good foundation, and like all these different things. So what was it like being exposed to either equipment, vehicles, stuff like that, that maybe you weren't that experienced with, but jumping into it? And I think that's so important, not just for the automotive side, but that happens in everything. Like you're going through it right now with what your future is going to be like with a shop and how to balance your social media and the different things that you're doing. There are all these unknowns that all of us and all of us listening are going to face. So how did you handle that?
Well, first of all, I love to wing everything, which is, just part of it. But that was kind of like my attitude starting out, which my bosses ended up loving, was I was pretty much willing to try anything. I will be honest with you, if you assign me something and I have no fucking idea what I'm doing, but I'll tell you, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to fucking give it my best shot. And Hanan was, and I think this is where a lot of mechanics, when they're starting out, this is what you need is a company like this. You need a company that was like, is basically the managers have the attitude of, we're aware you don't know what you're doing. We're well aware of that. Try it anyways and see what fucking happens. We're well aware that you're going to take longer than normal. We're well aware that you could fuck shit up, but just give it a shot. And that's what I did, is I worked my way up from like doing services and batteries and PDIs. And PDIs and services are so great to learn the machines because, yes, I'd been around logging equipment when I was younger, but as far as doing anything that I was doing, it was all new to me, all of it. So I really loved doing the PDIs and stuff like that initially because I got to learn the machines and learn about them and get a good foundation for how the systems worked. They pushed me through training. I pretty much told them, give me every single training opportunity you have, every single online course that you possibly fucking have. Give me fucking all of it. All of it. Just give me all of it. And that's what they did. And they pushed me hard. And they were just one of those companies that if you didn't show much interest in it, they didn't care. They wouldn't try to push you through it. But if you were dedicated and you showed that that's what you want to do and you're going to put your effort in, they would send you to any training that was available that you wanted to go to. And that was super helpful because the trainings are super great. I know a lot of people are going to be on here like, oh, capstones are just a piece of paper. And to a degree, yes, they don't really replace hands-on experience. But what they do is they give you a really great understanding of how the systems work. And that is the foundation for everything in the mechanic industry, is actually understanding how they're supposed to function. Because how are you supposed to diagnose anything if you don't even know how it's supposed to work?
Yeah.
Right. And I just kind of took everything I could take. And that was, my attitude of just give me anything. I don't care what it is. I'll try it, is what built me the success that I had, because I wasn't too good for anything. Shit, even at my 7.5 year mark, I was still doing services sometimes, right? Because I've met mechanics before that are too good to do services and too good to do this, or they think they can pick and choose what they work on. And I've just never been one of those people. And, I wasn't intentionally doing this, but after I'd been told the amount of times that I was told this, it started to make sense of it's more valuable to have a mechanic that may take a little bit longer sometimes and isn't like super perfect at everything, but is willing to do anything you give them, than somebody who's a phenomenal mechanic, but it's wasted because they're horrible to try to work with, or they're stuck up in what they think they can do. And that's just kind of the attitude I've always had. And it turned out to work good. So I was one of the top paid mechanics in the last 3 shops I've worked in. So not the top, but one of the top paid mechanics. So
Do the systems that you mentioned and learning them in the mechanical arena, are you taking that same approach into what you're doing now? Because you're expanding into a lot of other parts of it, like social media, like your podcast, like I'm sure of a ton of different things. Do those same systems or that same approach to learning the system still apply to things you're currently working on?
Kind of. I mean, I do struggle, and I'll be completely honest with your audience. I struggle to have the give a shit and the passion for my social media and everything that goes with social media in the same way that I had with my career as an actual mechanic. Social media was just like a fun hobby I did that just blew up into something huge. And for a minute, I enjoyed it and I liked it, but it's since become like, I mean, every day I wake up and I'm like, oh, I gotta I gotta do this. I gotta edit this. I gotta post this. I gotta contact all these companies that I work with or for and make sure I'm meeting their needs with the social media stuff. And I long for the days that I made half the money I do now, at least, just showing up in a shop and doing what I love every day. And so that's a huge struggle to transition from that, because to me personally, social media is not near as fulfilling as what I used to do. And I struggle a lot with like trying to like keep a good attitude with it and keep up on it. And I don't know. I don't really know if that answers your question, but like, so I do try to like, I used to be really good at like researching the algorithms and researching what does good and researching audios and researching all this stuff. And it's probably the reason my pages have kind of gone stagnant for a while, but I don't have the passion and the energy to put it into that. I've been putting more of my energy into figuring out exactly what I need to get a shop going. That's where I've been putting most of my effort in. The social media to me is more, I don't really view social media as a career. I view it as more of an investment for the future in an aspect that I can use it to benefit or as a tool, an advertisement tool for my own stuff later on. Or, all the companies I work with, like Hitachi is super awesome. Diesel Laptops is super awesome. Not only are they working with me, but I have a Hitachi loader. I have a Diesel laptop program. And then, there's smaller collaborations like Industrial Injection and Synergy that like, for the first time in my entire life, somebody sent me a part for free and all I have to do is post on social media. Like, hell yes. But it's a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. Like just doing, for an example, I just did a mirror install on my 3rd gen, right? And not to like go off on a tangent too much here, but I probably spent 5 hours doing that, and a solid, well, maybe like 4 hours, a solid like hour and a half of that was making sure I was getting the right video angles, making sure I was explaining things, making sure people could see what I was videoing, getting my camera set up, moving it around, making sure my audio was working. And it's something like, I actually hate that part of it. And it kind of almost takes away from the fun and the enjoyment of what I'm doing, if that makes any sense.
It does. Yeah, I love these conversations with you, like when, when I was on your podcast, because it would get me thinking and going in a bunch of different directions. Like one of the things you mentioned was spending so much time on social media to show this, install, this thing you're putting on your truck, how much of it you're dedicating towards the video and just the presentation of it, right? But it sounds like you get fulfillment and passion from doing it, from putting it on or fixing something. And then you're having to incorporate the audio video, to show it every place. And I see a lot of that in automotive with companies where it's like they try to do both. They try to, say they build this widget and it's one of the best widgets in the marketplace. But then they're also trying to do the social media side of it as well. And my mind always goes to, you're an expert and one of the leaders in what you're building or what you fix or whatever it might be, and you're pulling energy away to try to do this other thing, which is it's a full-time career in its own sense. Like being social media, doing podcasts, doing YouTube videos, that is a career. It's 40 plus hours a week. And sometimes I think, why don't you just focus on like this awesome part that you're building? Is that kind of the struggle like currently that you're in, where you're like, I'm really passionate about doing this. I want to build my shop. I want to get that going, but I'm being pulled. I'm having to give 10%, 20%, 40% energy to this other thing and trying to balance it.
Yeah, and that kind of is, because social media is a lot more work than people think it is. And which some companies understand that, right? Like companies like Industrial Injection and Synergy, Boost Auto, Speedlab, AirDog, all these companies that I've worked with, they understand. Even Diesel Laptops and Hitachi, they understand the benefits of my social media and working with me. They also understand the time and effort it takes to make these videos and do all the editings and stuff, because they themselves also have entire departments dedicated to that, right? And I'm doing it myself. Like, thank God Diesel Laptops and Hitachi, like when I film podcasts for them, they do the editing in their own department. But when I'm doing it on my own and I'm trying to do these install videos and stuff, I can't, and this is nothing against people that edit videos, but I can't trust someone to edit a video properly when it's a repair video,
Yeah.
because I want to make sure that, like, I know as a mechanic, I know what information is just me rambling and bullshit and I can cut it out. But I know what the most important key moments of that and key parts of that are. And I don't trust anyone to be able to edit that and get it right.
Yeah.
I guess. And so I've always had this problem of, like, if you want it done right, you do it yourself kind of thing, which is super annoying, because I really wish which is why I reached out to you for help with editing podcasts. I'm like, not only do you guys do podcasts for a fucking living, so you guys obviously got this figured out, but like, I don't have the expertise or the time, and you guys do it for a living. So I feel like I can trust you guys to edit the podcasts and do that editing, obviously, because you do it yourself. But it took a lot. Took a lot for me to reach that point of even asking for help, even with like parts for my trucks and stuff. Even though the social media part of it is not what I like out of that, it actually took a lot for me to build up the gumption to convince myself it's okay to ask these companies for free parts for what you're doing. You're worth it. It's valuable to them. It's fine. You're not just freeloading. Like, because to me, I've never like taken too much stock in my social media, and I've never viewed it as that important. So it's hard for me to understand that other companies can view it as important. So I'm slowly starting to like figure out my own worth with the social media. Doesn't mean I want to do it anymore. Doesn't make me want to do it anymore. But I'm slowly starting to figure out my worth with that, because I've not put a lot of worth into it for a long time. So,
Do you think that's one of the harder things to do with social media, in not just like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, but like YouTube as well, or even, like podcast apps that you're on, where I'd say in automotive, it's been tough to attach a worth to it. I feel like it lags behind other industries. Like, there's friends that I have or people that I know that are in other industries, and they make tons of money and they have tons of collaborations in these other industries, because they're just, I don't know what the right word is for it, but they know what it takes to produce like good content or good information, or show a repair video, or give these tips. And so there's more kind of collaboration with it. And I feel like in automotive, and I'm sure we'll get to this as well, as like, the struggle with building social media, the struggle with careers, the struggle with visions that we have. But I think it lagged for a long time in how much it was appreciated. And then as like a content creator, which you are, it's really tough to decide, like, what is this worth? Like, is this valued? Is it not valued? And I wanted to ask you this, like, was there one company, if you want to name them, you're more than welcome to, but one company that you worked with where they changed that whole perception because of the way they interacted with you, the way they supported you, and it just kind of clicked a light bulb, like, okay, there are places that do understand my worth. There are places that do understand how I reach people, the way I educate them, the way that I connect the brand or the part or the repair to them, that just like flip that switch for you.
well, I mean, it was never me. because I never found much worth in it. But it was Diesel Laptops really that were like, they're the first company that ever came to me and they're like, we see a value in your social media and we want to work with you. We want to pay you what you get paid as a mechanic to work for us exclusively and do podcasts and do, videos and pictures and promote our product and stuff like that. And at first, like I said, they tried to hire me for like 3 years. And the first couple of years, I'm like, Tyler, I don't want to leave my career. I love this too much. Like, that just does not sound like fun to me. I don't even like understand. I feel like you're overpaying for me anyways, because I just really don't understand the value in this. And it took him like 3 years, like I said, to convince me that there's a value in that. And then what really made me bite the bullet on it was when I was working here, like I said, and it was super hot, super horrible. And I could not find a shop that wasn't mandatory freaking Saturdays. And I'm like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. And now I finally started to understand that, like, a lot of these companies, and like what Tyler told me, he's like, because I told him, like, when he first quoted me for my wage, I'm like, dude, this, like, I don't want to, like, I like money, so don't take this wrong, but like, I feel like this is too much. And he's like, I told him, like, I'm totally fine if you tell me fuck off. I have to have that supplemental income of what I make in a shop to make it worth it, right? If you tell me fuck off, I totally understand. And he's like, Melissa, we spend X, Y, and Z on advertising every year. And we don't reach near the people that you reach with one video. So yes, it's absolutely worth it to us. And I'm like, damn, I never even fucking thought of that shit. Like, and so that's kind of where I started figuring out like, it is worth it. And as much as I don't like it, it is a necessary element to it. Even if I was starting my own shop and doing my own shit, having that social media presence that I've built is going to be such a huge advantage to not having one at all. And now I've finally started like figuring out exactly how many parts someone can send me that's worth this and this and that. And I usually try to be really generous with the amount of videos I post and the amount of promotion I do and things like that. I don't take affiliate money from anyone. I will not do affiliates of any kind. I won't, take money for sales because, I only promote products that I use or I believe in. I don't want that to be watered down by the fact that I'm also making money on sales of that product. So that's just what I do. And so far it's worked. I'm starting to bridge the gap of having more and more sponsorships for my trucks and things like that. And more companies like Hitachi and Diesel Laptops that literally pay me a monthly wage to do the things for them. But it's still, as much as I love these companies, it's still just not the same as what I was doing working in the industry. So it doesn't feel as fulfilling. Diesel stuff.
Something that we touched on when I was a guest on your podcast was authenticity. And I think that's really crucial to what you've built and what comes across in what you do, like the content that I watch, like your podcasts, I watch them in shorts and other things like that. How crucial is that authenticity? Like, we had some comments on when we reposted your podcast, and a lot of people loved like your personality and how direct and blunt you are. There were a couple people that were like, "Oh, she cusses too much." And I'm like, "So what?" Like,
I get that at every video I post. Every motherfucking every video I post, I get that comment. So I kind of blew it off.
But I
I
think
was a diesel mechanic I've been a mechanic for 10 years, professionally for 7.5. I'm sorry. I don't speak like some, oh my God. So, okay, today we're doing hair tutorials. Sorry, I don't talk like that.
I think it's the authenticity though. Like, that's what people like. Like I mentioned, like I was an office nerd and I'd like go in the back and that's where the magic happened. Like, I'd hear every cuss word under the sun, and the guys would like string them together into a phrase that was like really funny or like expressed more thing. Yeah, it is an art form. But do you think how important is authenticity to you? Not just in the social media videos, podcasts that you do, but as you're approaching this new stage where you're looking at having your own shop, is that like the top thing that customers, viewers, followers, subscribers will get from you?
to personally, I think it is. But I was also raised with a father that, like, I mean, the most important characteristic you can have is humility, right? That's my father is such an incredible person, and there's a reason he's so successful in the logging industry. And I've kind of used his attitude with things as the blueprint for my career, which obviously worked amazing. And I think authenticity, humility, honesty, I think all of that. And part of that is also brought down from the dealerships that I started out with too, because, you know, Hanan and Four Rivers were both very like, we want to do this right. We want to do the customer well. You know, we need to be doing right by the customers. And that's just a mindset that has been engraved in me from my father all the way through my career. So if I were to be able to start my own shop, you know, obviously there's some things with modifications where I can be like, hey, I can't warranty everything, because if you want some massive turbo on your truck and some injectors, but you're not willing to put a clutch and transmission in it, like, I'm fine with that, but I'm not willing to stamp my name on the fact that, like, if you blow your transmission up in a week because you're doing burnouts, like, I can't really stamp my name on that. But am I going to fix a leak because I messed up a gasket? Absolutely. Like, I'm going to do that for free, right? And so that's what I would and that's kind of what I bring with my social media. I think everybody on social media has a little bit of a watered down shit with them, because you cannot dig into politics too much with social media. You just can't. You are writing your fucking death warrant with that. Even religion, you're writing your death warrant with that. And it's not that I've never been the type of person that, I mean, not recently. I used to be, in my younger days, pretty loudmouthed and outspoken with certain things when there was only Facebook, right? But I've started to learn that, like, I've kind of grown into this person that, like, I don't really need to scream my opinions to the rooftop, especially when it comes to politics and religion. To me, that's kind of a private matter. And it's not really something that, like, I don't particularly give a fuck what your political views are. So why do you care what mine are? And, you know, I don't believe in pulling the celebrity thing, regardless of what side you're on, or religion, or whatever the fucking controversial issue is. I don't really believe in using a large following and a social media platform to try to convince people that they need to believe what you believe, I guess. So that, in a sense, like, the real me at home with the people that I know personally, obviously there are some certain things that I'm very opinionated on, but I'm not going to go and fucking tell customers that. I might have a conversation with the customer about it if they bring it up and I agree with them. But if they bring it up and I don't agree with them, I'm just be like, hey, we're not going to get into politics. You know, let's just keep it professional. But that's something that, like, on my social media, I try not to touch with the 10-foot pole. I try not to fucking, dive into that shit too much. And that's a little bit where the social media and the customer service me is a little bit different than the personal me. You know, I mean, personal me also doesn't care what people do with their personal lives, including politics. But obviously, everybody's opinionated on certain things. I just, with social media, you got to be careful, especially if you're trying to work with other companies and big companies. You cannot have your page associated with controversial issues, because they will not work with you, because they also are trying to avoid that shit with a 10-foot pole. So,
yeah. Hey, diesel fans, I wanted to chat with you about diesel fuel. It's something we've talked about a lot on the podcast, and specifically ways that it can lead to a lot of costly repairs. And the main reason that we have these issues is a lack of lubricity. Our friends over at Hot Shot Secrets have developed a formula that boosts performance and then addresses this issue. So whether you have an old truck, new one, something, anywhere in between, we all face this issue. Hot Shots EDT is a 6-in-1 formula. It cleans injectors, boosts cetane, and it has 4 times the lubricity as their leading competitor. So it's a great way to be able to stay ahead of the maintenance curve, avoid those costly repairs, and the best part is it does the work for you. So all you do is add it to your regular fuel up schedule, and it's doing all the heavy lifting. So you don't have to worry about some of those issues that just come with diesel fuel anytime we buy it from the pump. If you go to hotshotsecret.com, use code DieselPod20 It'll get you 20% off your order. We really appreciate the team and our friends over at Hot Shot Secret offering this discount code just for you guys. So if you're in the market, head on over to their website, use code DieselPod20 and get 20% off your order. Common question we get from you guys a lot is, hey, I need a diesel engine. I either, I can't wait this long to get one, or normal place I get stuff from it just takes too long, or they don't have the parts in it that I need. Maybe my truck's not stock, or I tow heavy with it. I don't want to go back with just a stock engine. DFC Diesel is a sponsor of the podcast. We worked with them, hand in hand on doing episodes, answering technical questions. They have a complete lineup of Cummins, Duramax, and Power Stroke remanufactured engines that are set to a standard of ISO 9001 2015 standards, which is a huge deal in the aftermarket. And there's certain levels of quality testing, validation that are required for that. So when you get one of those engines, the type of quality that's built behind it with an industry-leading warranty that's really comprehensive. And the other thing with that is, sometimes the options that are out there, it's a basic OEM engine. You want a little bit more. You don't want to have the same failure again. So there's a bunch of different series of engines that they have, from core, street, tow haul, and also the Speed of Air series, which we've covered on the podcast before. There's a lot of really cool benefits to it. And if you have questions about that, reach out to them. If you don't know the type of engine that you're looking for, if you go to dfcdiesel.com, there's a ton of info there. You can send an email or you can reach out to them. Also, they're working with Speed of Air pistons, which it's the only piston that pays for itself. And there's a lot of really cool technology behind it. So you can add that into your build and be able to get better fuel economy, increase power, increase torque, and better engine life out of it. Some of the most common engine applications or series of engines that they have with that lead time, a lot of them are in stock or they have really short lead times. So you can check your favorite retailer or go to dfcdiesel.com, check them out, see what's in stock, see what you can get. If you have questions, maybe you want to do something that's outside of the normal series of engines, they have tons of choices for rods, cranks, pistons, valve train upgrades, tons of different things. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure and head on over and check them out. Yeah, it makes complete sense. You mentioned the influence of like diesel trucks and semis with your dad and his successful business, and how you modeled your approach to it after his business. And I just recently watched that. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but that Dale Earnhardt documentary. I think it's on Prime, which is really good. But one of the things that Dale Earnhardt had talked about was his dad was a race car driver, NASCAR driver, and he wanted to impress his father. He wanted to, I think, get his approval. And then they had talked with Dale Earnhardt Jr., and he was talking about the same thing, was like a main focal point of that documentary. And when you mentioned that, it reminded me of watching that, and I think even my own life, of wanting to get the approval of my dad or my family, somebody that was important in it. How has that been like? Because you talked about being early on, your mom said, hey, maybe you should go do this. Well, you kind of mess around with the diesel truck stuff. Well, here you're 10 years on, you have 500,000 plus Instagram followers, a ton on TikTok, over 100,000 on YouTube, tens of thousands of plays on YouTube podcasts, things like that. What's that like with this idea that you had when you were younger to where it is now? Like, it is, what do they say? Are they just sit like kind of in amazement and go, wow, you really built this from what you thought you wanted to do when you were younger to where it is now. This is really cool.
Well, first of all, my dad doesn't even have Facebook. He literally calls the entire internet Google Facebook. So he has, because that's literally the only two things he knows that's on the internet. The only thing that man knows how to use is YouTube for like 1970s freaking logging videos. Okay. But so he doesn't really understand he doesn't fully understand the social media thing. Honestly, kind of has the same opinions I do with social media, to be honest with you. But my mom, she's proud of it. That whole like thing that she had where she's like, I don't really know if this is a great idea for you to do, that she completely switched beats 180 the first job I got offered, which was $17.50 an hour, which was well fucking above minimum wage. She's like, holy fucking shit, maybe this was a good idea. And now she's one of my biggest fucking fans with it. And she does support my social medias. It's hilarious because she'll comment on my Facebook stuff every now and then as my mom, and like with her personal page, right? And they'll fake pages will come in and comment on her shit, and it's like, that's my mom. I understand if you want to try to scam everyone else in the comments, but don't fucking scam my mom. Leave my mom out of this. But yeah, that my dad and my mom are beyond the moon fucking happy with my mechanic side. My dad thinks I need to go back to that pretty much exclusively, but the only reason he thinks that is because he's well aware that that's where my passions are, and that's what makes me happy, and that's all he cares about. He knows the social media is not something that really makes me happy anymore, or isn't like the main source. Like, it's not the same as actually turning wrenches on shit, and that's the only reason he thinks I need to go back, which I totally support that. But yeah, they're pretty happy with it. Like I said, my dad does not understand the social media thing at all, but I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. What sort of struggles have you had in your career from starting out, getting into it, working through different platforms, different dealerships, to expanding into social media, to what you're doing now with looking at starting a shop? Like, did you find a lot of resistance because the mechanical side is so like heavily male dominated? Was that something that was an issue? Was it maybe to get opportunity? Did you find anything? Well, I'm sure there's things, but like what are a couple that stood out as challenges, and then how did you overcome them through your evolution?
So, as I've said to a lot of podcasters, is my experiences in the heavy equipment industry in the male-dominated field is vastly different than most women. And I do credit some of that to the area that I was working in, Colorado and Wyoming. I mean, Wyoming is literally the equality state. They were the first state to give women the right to vote, literally. So, like, being in a ranching community and those type of areas, women working on ranches, working on stuff, owning trucks, that was normal for that culture. So I did not have, if anything, it was the opposite of resistance with going into that field. Like, not all companies, with the exception of one company here in the East, have been more than ecstatic to have me on, and more than ecstatic to have me in the shop. And I guess whatever the opposite word of reservation is with it. So I've always been given opportunities with open arms, pretty much, especially in the heavy equipment industry, especially once I started getting my experience and my work could speak for itself. Most of the challenges that I faced were self-inflicted, right? Like not having the experience for a specific job and fucking it up and having to go through the emotions of, I have higher standards for myself. I can't believe I fucked this up. And now I'm beating myself up worse than my boss was ever going to beat me up about it. And now it's like I'm doing the girl thing where it's like on my brain for the next fucking year because I fucked this one thing up. And that's really been really the only like resistance or struggles was actually my own bullshit and my own, like, I had to learn, hey, Melissa, I understand that there's this little gauge on your computer that tells you how long the job is supposed to take. And we understand that incrementally fills up. And when it starts getting close to the end, it turns red. Melissa's ADD, like, panic fucking shit sets in. Like, oh my God, I need to get this done faster. It took me forever to learn that, like, that gauge is for people that need motivation because they're slacking, because they're on their phone, because they don't care. That is not for people like you. And it took me forever to learn that because I had to learn the hard way that quality is more important than speed, and that speed comes with time. And obviously I had to learn those lessons the hard way. So those are really the only like challenges that I can think of really are challenges that are just brought on with being a new mechanic, being unexperienced, or working in new shops, having to earn, your boss's trust in new shops, which that's not a woman thing. Everybody has to earn trust, right? Every new mechanic in a shop has to earn trust with what they can do. So that's really in trying to like pick a good shop to work in, which I've been fortunate enough to make great choices so far. That's really like, as far as being in the male domination, every shop I ever worked in was a great harmony because, yes, I might not be as physically strong as them. First of all, it's a heavy equipment shop. Almost everything is designed to be lifted by a crane. But on the rare occasion that things aren't, and my strength is what's lacking, or my physical, because I don't give a shit what people say, women are weaker than men physically. That's just how we are. There's nothing wrong with it. That's just biologically how we are. But everything that I lacked in the physical strength, I made up for in other areas. So we would just trade, right? Like, okay, real example, Nick, can you help me fucking break this bolt loose or lift this fucking shit? Because I just cannot do, I've been trying to do it by myself. Can you come help me? Okay, yeah. Next day, hey, Melissa, you're small and tiny with little tiny hands and arms. I'm going to shove you up this auger tube for this combine so you can hold this motor up and I can start the bolt and it's going to save me 4 fucking hours. So it was a trade-off, and every shop I've ever worked in has been like that. There's things that I can help them with that they can't do themselves just because I am small and I am tiny. And then there's trade-offs, and that actually creates, I think, an added benefit to shops because, yes, I'm small, but there's a lot of benefits to being small. And there's certain jobs, like, for example, not to go on too much of a tangent here, but for example, in the last construction shop I worked at, which was the Hanan shop in Cheyenne, we had what's called PIPs come in for graders. And PIP stands for Product Improvement Program, which is a really fucking fancy way of saying recall. And what you had to do was reroute a couple of hydraulic lines in the back hydraulic pump area, put new attenuator lines in for the hydrostatic pumps. But with that, you had to run a couple little, I don't even remember where these hoses went. It was so long ago. Some of it was also like a harness, I want to say it was X21 connector replacement, new brackets, because vibrations were causing issues, was basically the concern with this. Well, to get one of these fittings out on the side of the pump, how you were supposed to do it was remove the entire air intake, air cooler, so the charge air cooler out, which on equipment is not just like 5 minutes, but you're supposed to remove this whole thing so you can reach this Allen plug and take it out and reroute a hose to a different port. And well, I don't have to do that because I'm so tiny and my arms are so skinny that I can just reach back in there and do it. And I was shaving off like a solid 4 or 5 hours from everybody else's work on their time with doing that, which in warranty world is really important because warranty only pays you for what your write-ups tell you. And they are super obviously Deere doesn't want to pay you, right? So they try to cut corners to paying labor as much as they can. And I was starting to get them in trouble because everybody else was taking like 6 or 7 hours to do this. And it took me 3 hours to do this job. And they finally sat me down and like, you're fucking awesome. We need you to make an entire PDF with pictures because we're all mechanics and we're all stupid. We need pictures. So with pictures on how you did this. And I did it. And they're like, we can't even do this because we're too big to fit our hands and arms back there. So people always say like, oh, how did you work on something so big? It's so tiny. I'm like, actually, it made a lot of things easier than it was for the men. So obviously some things were harder, but some things were easier. And most shops saw the value in that, and it was an even trade. So
how do all the things we've talked about so far, how do they factor into your vision for this business, this shop that you want to start? There's so many.
The shop, like starting my own shop thing was so far out of my vision. So when I first started in this industry, I mean, I had my times. I want to work a solid 10 years as a mechanic or 15 years. I want to be the best fucking mechanic I can possibly fucking be. And then maybe after like 10 or 15 years, I want to maybe work into the management side of it, right? Being like, once I started getting older, wanting to have a family, maybe I can start working into the, the office side of it. But I never wanted to be full-time office or anything like that. I never even thought about having my own shop because quite frankly, if I were to choose, I would want my own Deere dealership and have it as mine, but still work as a mechanic in it, which is totally unrealistic. Trying to acquire a Deere dealership is damn near impossible if you are not like a millionaire. So, and they're not just acquired by one person. Usually they're shareholdings, so what am I supposed to, how am I going to buy out the majority shareholders with the income that I have? But the having my own shop thing didn't really start coming into play until actually about 4 years ago. So it was a pretty recent thing when I started seeing girls like Cummins Cowgirl building her own, like building all these badass trucks and building all these cool builds and things like that. And I'm like, well, I don't really I'll do lift kits because that's cake ass work, but I'm really more interested in the performance engine side of it. And even then, that's still not going to meet my needs as far as challenges with that, and as far as what the challenges of heavy equipment brought, but it's better than nothing. And it's engines, and I love engines. So I'm just started going for it, I guess, especially after Diesel Laptops is like, hey, I'll hire you for this much. I'm like, all right, well, that'll give me more than enough time to try and figure it out. So I've just been winging it this whole time.
What is the biggest challenge, the management office side of this vision versus the mechanical?
Well, so there's a few things, and I'll be completely honest, and I actually just got done talking to Cummins Cowgirl about this, is I was a very good mechanic at Deere. You want to know part of the reason why? Not only did I have more than the experience, I was very familiar with the machines. You have John Deere, you have all the technicians there to help you, to bounce ideas off of. You have all the professional tools. You have all the professional manuals. You have every single resource you could ever fucking need. And if something came down to the point where you couldn't figure it out, because I've always been a believer that I need to exhaust all my resources before I ask for help, right? Let's say I exhaust my resources. I ask for help. They can't figure it out. I am a few minutes away from a conversation with the John Deere engineer. Starting my own shop, I don't have any of that. I don't have all of the perfect manuals for every single fucking truck I work on. I don't have all the diagnostic stuff. I don't have all the scanners. I don't have the AC machines. I don't have a lift I need. And that, so there's, I quite frankly lack the confidence in that, because I don't have the support that I had, which I know I can still do it. That's just, it's always in my head because I have a very high expectation of my work quality. And I know that I'm going to be humbled pretty hard with this. The second part of it is kind of the ops management part. Like, how do I get customers? How do I make customers happy? Do I need insurance? Do I not even need insurance? How do I even get a shop in the first place and make it a business? I already have an LLC, but how do I go about hiring employees? Because then I'm going to have to change all that and do all my taxes differently. And like insurance for if I fuck up, like obviously you get into the modification world and there is no such thing as insurance. It's just, well, you're taking a risk. But when if I'm just doing like stock ass shit on engines or trucks, I'm going to need insurance for that, because it doesn't matter how good of a mechanic you think you are, you're going to mess up sometimes. And I'm sorry, I don't have the money to fork over for, let's just say an extreme. I've never actually blown up an engine, but let's just say I do an engine for somebody and I blow it up, which is very, very rare. Probably won't happen, but my brain is an overthinker, right? I'm like, what happens if this happens? Well, I don't have the money to just fork over for a new engine.
Yeah.
So you have to have insurance for that shit. So that's just like, there's so much more to it than just opening the garage door and being like, yeah, come in, let me work on whatever you got. So I wish I could have the confidence my dad has and I could just fix anything. But my experience is so fucking limited to John Deere and specifically working at dealerships where I have the support that I need, that jumping into the private sector of doing my own thing and working for myself, I still want to do it. I'm still going to do it, but there's so many challenges of not just the office side, but the doing the actual work as well. Like, I gotta be good at making quotes on trucks that I've never fucking had to make quotes for. Can I quote you exactly how long a fucking transmission takes on a John Deere J Series backhoe? Yep, got that figured out in my brain, seared into my brain because I've done so many of them. I know exactly how long it's going to take me. Do I have any idea how long it's going to actually take me to do your engine? No, I don't. And that's another thing where there are companies like Diesel Laptops that they do have the manual support, which is great, but they are also geared towards the heavy industry, right? The heavier side of things. So they are missing like the code diagnostics for these trucks. They are missing the actual truck side of the truck repairs. You know, they are missing the wiring diagrams for these trucks because, I mean, why the fuck would a company that specializes in semis, the only reason they have information on the engines because these engines are in fucking everything, right? But that's like, where do I start? Where do I get all that shit? I mean, I'm sure I could work with Diesel Laptops and get that figured out, but that's just another fucking step that I need because especially if I start working on newer trucks, it's not, I mean, Cummins Cowgirl and I were just talking about this. It's not actually possible to properly diagnose an electrical issue if you don't have a schematic that tells you where all the connectors go to, where all the wires are ran, how they're routed, what everything they go through, you know, what are they intertwined with or interconnected to? How do the computer systems actually work? I just learned recently that my Dodge does not have, my 05 doesn't actually have a boost sensor. It has a map sensor. What the map sensor is manifold air pressure, which is a barometric pressure. It basically reads the pressure of the intake manifold, which in a sense you would think that's a boost sensor, but it's not because that's also including the barometric pressure. So it takes that sensor, which is not really a boost sensor, but kind of is, that sensor, the air intake sensor, and the other secondary barometric pressure sensor, and it's actually a calculated value on what it thinks its boost is. So, but how would I have known that? Like that whole learning curve that I went through with that is a whole learning curve I'm going to have to go through with somebody else's vehicle. And how do you quote them fairly for that diagnostic time?
Yeah.
You know, things like that I think about a lot.
It's one of the things I've heard from a lot of shop owners, because I always ask them, like, what was the biggest challenge? And, you know, in their experience, they focused in on the truck side. So, like, the way that you know the equipment and the John Deere stuff, they knew about trucks, but they always tell me it's like the office stuff was always so challenging. And recently I've seen, and I think it's really cool, that there's different companies, like big companies in this industry that are doing, like, education seminars for shop owners, for professionals, to teach them or direct them on some of this stuff. Like, how do you do your accounting? What about your marketing? How do you do this? How do you do, like, it's getting to be much more of a science. And I think that's the biggest struggle. And it's so true what you mentioned with maybe running into a problem at the dealership level is you had people you worked with you could ask, managers you could ask, and if all else fails, you call the guy who designed the part or who, you know, is like the guardian of the engineering document and can tell you. But venturing into the entrepreneurial side, like there's not a whole lot of roadmaps because you're going to be very unique and specific to what you're working on, where you're located, and it can be super intimidating. But I know there's some good resources out there, so maybe we can connect like after the podcast and stuff, and I can direct you towards maybe some people I know or some different kind of things like that you might be able to lean on, you know, through the process with it. If you were to give somebody advice, like if you were to advise like 18-year-old you to get to where you want to be, what would you tell yourself as far as either speeding up the process, maybe slowing down the process, maybe focusing on something different? What advice would you give to yourself looking back?
I would tell myself to maybe or maybe not skip Wyotech. I have nothing against Wyotech, but what I would have told myself is, hey, there's not a future for us in the semi world. And even if you want there so bad to be a future in the semi world, the future in the heavy equipment world is going to be so much more fucking fun. Like so much more fun. So screw that. Go get your schooling paid for by John Deere. Go to their college for a few years, work as an intern as you're doing it, and literally have your first set of tools and your entire schooling paid for by John Deere. and just go that route and skip all of the other shit. That's what I tell myself. And that's what I tell a lot of people now when they ask about getting started is I tell them there are so many opportunities to get your schooling for free as in any trade. There are so many opportunities. And yes, you do that. You're stuck basically at that dealership for a few years, but that's fucking worth it. I paid for all my own tools when I first started out. Granted, Wyotech had a deal where Snap-on was 50% off, but I thought I got everything that I could possibly need when I did that, including like a small toolbox because I couldn't afford to just go out and buy another one outright. And I learned so fucking fast I didn't have enough tools for it. And so the next theory that I would tell people or advice is I know it's super tempting to buy tools from a bunch of different tool trucks because it's so easy, because it's just weekly payments, but don't do that. Don't rack up a bunch of tool bills at a bunch of fucking tool trucks. I understand that you need tools. And if you borrow something more than 3 times, you need to be buying it yourself, unless it's a big tool, right? But try to limit your spending on tool trucks because yes, you need things now. You need things to make it easier. Maybe they got a deal going on, but it's so easy as a mechanic to get, especially when you're starting out. For the first 3 or 4 years, I spent $10,000 on tools a year at least. So it's so easy to get into that. And I spent all of my extra money on tools that I literally didn't have money to build a truck or even buy a new truck. I ran my Dodge 1500 that I had when I was 16 all the way up until I was like 22 or 23 because I just couldn't afford anything else. And I'm not going to get into the poor me reasons as to why I could actually afford that truck. I don't want pity from anyone, but there are some life-changing circumstances as to why I even got that truck. So prioritize your needs a little bit better. Obviously, you need tools, but don't go broke trying to buy tools because you can easily dig yourself into a hole with tool trucks. And then get your schooling paid for. So
that's great
that's
advice.
my advice. Show up with a good attitude, work hard, and don't be scared to say no on jobs. You're going to be a lube tech for a while. You're going to be doing shit work and small jobs for a long time, and that's just how it is. Do not expect to leave trade school and build engines. I did not expect that, but you have no idea how many young people I've talked to that are pissed off because they start in a shop and they won't let them do engine work for the first year. And it's like, well, yeah, no shit. Don't know why you thought that was going to be different, but
it's great advice. I think it's really helpful to get these insights from you because you've been involved in so many different parts of it and you're evolving and working towards something else. And I think it'll be cool to be able to follow along with your progression. And there's a lot of lessons and inspiration that people can find from that. For people that want to check out your podcast, they want to check out your socials, how can they find you on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, TikTok?
So everything is the Diesel Queen, with the exception of Instagram. It's the.diesel.queen. Every single page, my Instagram and my Facebook and my Twitter are verified, I believe. And then on my Instagram and Facebook for sure verified. My YouTube has like 200,000 subscribers, so that's pretty easy to figure out which one is me. My TikTok has 900 some thousand. So just make sure that especially you're following the right pages. There's so many fake pages of me. And if you do happen to be someone that is gracious enough to show your support and comment on my stuff, if somebody immediately starts following you or messaging you pretending to be me, it's not. They literally stalk my comments, people that comment on my stuff and try to scam you guys out of money. So not to make this about hey, don't fall for fake accounts, but I pay a lot of money to have my Facebook and Instagram verified to try to keep people from getting scammed. So the Diesel Queen, and I have 500 on Instagram, 455 on Facebook, 200 on YouTube, 900 some on TikTok. LinkedIn is 80,000, and then Twitter is almost 100,000. But just make sure you're following the right pages. because there's a million fake accounts of me. So,
like I said, I've been following you for a really long time. I love the podcast that you're doing. It's really cool because you cover things that like, and we had talked about this before I was ever a guest on your episode, is like collaboration is so important. Like the conversations you have and the people you talk to it's so different, and it interests me. And I'm sure some of the guests and the way that I don't like the term interview, but like the way that I talk to them is a little bit different. And I love the collaboration. I don't think there's been enough of it in like this part of automotive. And I think you said like, why not? And
why does there have to be a competition in the first place?
Right.
Competition is at the bottom. People at the bottom compete. People that are at the top, or people with the mindset to be at the top, collab. So why not collab with everyone? Why not? And it's a sharing of information. I don't believe in gatekeeping shit. So,
I hate gatekeeping.
That's just me, though. Some people do. Some people gatekeep the shit out of everything.
That's what I love about podcasts. Is I mentioned this on yours. Is like you can't. Mina used to gatekeep so much information, and it's just gone now. And I love it because that was such a barrier to entry to do things. Like that was a struggle I had early on before I ever worked in this industry. I wanted to get into it, but like I said, I was like the office nerd. So it's like, well, what do I do? And it was hard to kind of figure out how to even get into it and how to be around it, even how to learn these things. And it's changed so much. I think it's a really cool time to do that. But I really appreciate your time today, Melissa. I know you're super busy. You got a lot going on. I appreciate the conversation today. I loved getting to know more about you, your evolution, and your vision for the future. I encourage our listeners to make sure they subscribe to you, follow your podcast. Love the conversations on there, and look forward to chatting with you again in the future. Also, make sure to connect with you and pass along some people or information that might be able to help a little bit with kind of that office stuff you were mentioning with some different.
I will take any help or any advice anybody is willing to give me. I am not too good to admit that I need help or, I need some advice. So anything and everything you got, I will listen. So.
Well, thanks again for being on the Diesel Podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code TDP2540. It'll get you 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money and get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different opening mechanisms, handle designs. And their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. So if you're in the market, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code TDP2540 for 40% off MSRP. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters, Tyler Loewen of 23 Diesel, CUTTERUP Rob, Robert, all of other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube and podcast apps. Follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 9 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2025. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.